Good morning, members of Parliament, support staff, visitors in the public tribune, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media, and members of the media. Good morning. I would like to give a special welcome to the Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, Mr. Omar Otley, and his support staff. We have established a quorum of 9 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I received notice of absence from the following members: the chairman, MP Siddharth Bijlani, who is off island for medical purposes, MP Solange Duncan, MP Rayon Peterson, and MP Emmanuel. Notice of a late arrival was received from MP Angelique Rumu. At this point, I go to notifications. Are there any notifications? No, I see no requests. We have as agenda point for this meeting Ontwerplandsverordening tot vaststelling van de jaarrekening van het land Sint Maarten voor het dienstjaar 2021. Landsverordening vaststelling jaarrekening 2021. Ingekomen stuk 57 van het Zittingsjaar 2022-2023. De dato 8 mei 2023. National Ordinance establishing the annual accounts for Sint Maarten for the fiscal year 2021. The National Ordinance establishing accounts 2021 of the parliamentary year 2022-2023, document 167. The second agenda point is Ontwerplandsverordening tot wijziging van de Landsverordening Algemene ouderdomsverzekering, de Landsverordening Algemene weduwen en wezenverzekering, Landsverordening minimumlonen, de Landsverordening ziekteverzekering en de Landsverordening ongevallenverzekering ter aanpassing van de peilperiode voor het prijsindexcijfer van de gezinsconsumptie, ingekomen stuk 853 van het Zittingsjaar 2022-2023, de dato 9 juni 2023, Zittingsjaar 2022-2023, stuk 168. So the draft national ordinance to amend the national ordinance general old age insurance, the national ordinance general widows and orphans insurance, national ordinance minimum wages, the national ordinance health insurance, and the national ordinance accident insurance to adjust the reference period for the price index of household consumption, incoming document 853 of the present parliamentary year, dated June 9th, 2023, of the current parliamentary year, document 168. At this point, we go over to agenda point 2 rather than agenda point 1, which will be handled afterwards. So we go over to agenda point 2. On June 9th, 2023, Parliament received the draft National Ordinance to amend the National Ordinance General Old Age Insurance the National Ordinance General Widows and Orphans Insurance, National Ordinance Minimum Wages, the National Ordinance Health Insurance, and the National Ordinance Accident Insurance to adjust the reference period for the price index of household consumption. The document is registered as incoming document 853 of the current parliamentary year, dated June 2023, and can be found on the general P drive of Parliament. At this time, I would like to give the floor to the Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, the Honorable Minister Omar Otley, for some opening remarks and a presentation. Minister Omar Otley, you have the floor. Ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good day to the members of Parliament, my support staff, the viewing and listening public. It is truly, truly an honor to be here. It's been a long time coming, but we are here today nonetheless for the Repairing National Ordinance on Consumer Price Index, CPI. Table of content, aim and objectives, historical background, what is the CPI calculation method, pros of utilizing quarterly CPI, current legislation, and articles that will be affected. Aim and objective. Before we continue, I would like to make this extremely clear to the members of Parliament and the viewing and listening public. This is not the pension law. This is the law that allows us to adjust the pension, the National Ordinance General Widows and Orphan Insurance, the National Ordinance on Minimum Wage, the National Ordinance, the National Health Insurance Ordinance, the National Accident Insurance Ordinance. A little historical background. Under the current legislation, the adjustment of the amounts such as pension and etc. is subject to CPI for the month of August. So we only use the CPI for the month of August under the current legislation. Since 2018, the methodology used by the Department of Statistics has been adjusted and the price index is determined quarterly. Therefore, Yesetinwe said, Council of Advice, even the Governor's Cabinet has all given a negative advice to all attempts to index the pension based on third quarter CPI. To avoid any further delays in the indexation, all legislation have been amended to now make use of the second quarter CPI. This gives the government and the minister more time to ensure that we meet the January 1st deadline. Pension increase. May 6, 2022, the SED was requested to render an advice on the indexation of the pension on third quarter CPI 2021 compared to third quarter CPI 2022 with retroactive effect per January 2022. However, November 25th, the SED provided a negative advice with similar sentiments also echoed by the Council of Advice on September 20th, 2022. So they were similar advice. The conclusion of all discussions held indicated that one, the government needs to make use of the second quarter CPI as opposed to the third quarter CPI, and the necessary amendments needed to be formalized in this law before moving forward. Therefore, the pension cannot be indexed until the reparation of the law. Many persons have since asked, if this is the case, why would the minister then announce in January of the increase in pension? Well, the annual wijziging 125 states a statutory regulation is only given retroactive effect if there's a special reason. The special reason being that the minister announced to the public. So it has public consequence. Therefore, if it was not announced, we could not have done the pension retroactive, but it would only count from the time when the legislation is passed. What is consumer price index? Some people might be asking, what is CPI? CPI is a consumer price index, and it measures the change over time in cost of the basket of goods and services representatives of a household consumption expenditure. The price index for a household consumption is then used to index payment. Pros of using quarterly CPI. The reason for the changing a monthly indexation from the month of August to a quarterly indexation is to improve the quality of data and reduce the unpredictability and indexation due to the fact that products may not be available at that time for observation. The quarterly calculations is also recommended by United Nations standards for indexation. The pros of using second quarter CPI. Utilizing the second quarter ensures that the Minister of VSI will be able to adjust the various legislations yearly in a timely fashion to ensure legal certainties and aid in avoiding obstacles in legislative trajectories hindering the Minister from meeting the January 1st deadline the following year. Here we see a chart and specifications on the national ordinances that this CPI legislation will affect. The projected pension increase for 2023 is based on the second quarter CPI of 2021 with an inflation of 2.84% and a second quarter of 2022 CPI, which was 4.91%. The maximum pension is projected to move from 1,240 to the maximum of 1,338 based on the cumulative amounts of both second quarter of 2021 and 2022. Members of Parliament, it was my honor to present the basis of the legislation put forth. I thank you and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Minister Otley. And I look at the speakers list. The speaking time, no, we don't have any speaking time. We have, as first speaker, MP Sarah Westcott Williams. MP of the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good morning to you and our support staff here at Parliament. A good morning to my colleagues. A good morning to the Minister and his support staff, to those in the audience here this morning, as well as those tuned in to this meeting via the different media. Mr. Chairman, I thank the Minister for submitting the draft law 1 and presenting it to Parliament. It is something that over the course of the months since the indexation was announced that I have been asking the Minister about. It did the advisory rounds and is now before Parliament. Mr. Chairman, cognizant of the need to have this matter addressed in a national ordinance, I just have a few questions remaining, having taken note of the fact that initially a national decree was submitted, which of course could not work for the indexation of the pension and related issues. But Mr. Chairman, I want to address firstly the matter of the rectification, which is also taking place to have made it possible for the minimum wage to be indexed. So it's also being addressed in here. And looking at the minimum wage, which has been indexed, has been adjusted, and with that indexation came an increase of the minimum wage, I would like to know if the Minister and the Ministry have already given thought to the fact that some ordinances, such as the ordinance on financial assistance or social assistance, is tied in to the amount of the minimum wage. with the increase of the minimum wage, will now the recipients of social assistance, will there be a recalculation for those persons who before received a certain amount based on the level of the minimum wage, and with the increase in the minimum wage, this would now have to be adjusted? Will that be done? How quickly can that be done? This review of the persons receiving social assistance, which is tied to the minimum wage. Just to explain to especially the listening public, in receiving social assistance from government, it cannot be higher with any other income, so the social assistance and any other income the recipient might have together can never be more than the minimum wage. So if the minimum wage is increased, which means there's, albeit a small, but a little addition that would then have to be taken into consideration when deciding if and for how much a person is entitled to social assistance. So I would just like to know from the minister if and when that review will be done, are there any other matters, financially and otherwise, that are tied to the minimum wage increase? So like we have the issue with the social assistance, which is in reference to or refers to the minimum wage, are there any other such? We are also adjusting with the presentation made this morning. We are adjusting, as I mentioned, the law on the minimum wage to make the calculation based on the quarterly CPI, so the index, consumer price index, but still the minimum wage has already been indexed and gone into effect. Where and what is the difference that made it possible to have the minimum wage indexation, albeit based on the same CPI calculation, to have that go into effect, but the same could not have taken place with the pension and related matters? So I'm talking often pension, etc., etc. So that's my second question. So how come that one was possible? Because as far as I know, the minimum wage indexed per January 2023 did go into effect. I would like a further elucidation on the statement by the minister regarding the retroactive nature of this pension. Yes, I took note of the minister's statement regarding the retroactive nature. However, in the law and elucidation, reference is made to the fact that it cannot be retroactive. So the explanation given by the minister in terms of having made a statement, and that statement therefore legitimizes the retroactiveness of this particular law. If the minister can point a little more specific to that part. In connection therewith, the proposal in this draft law is that the effective date be established by national decree, by Landsverordening. And so my question is, will this Landsverordening then say that the effective date of the national ordinance, so the Landsverordening, is the 1st of January 2023? The matter of this amount and the amount, I believe, from the draft law, it's somewhere around 7-point-something million guilders is the financial effect for the SZV in this particular case, because that fund, the old age fund, is managed under the SZV. Could I have an updated and short overview of the financial situation of the funds of the SZV, once again taking into consideration this pension indexation? If that can be provided, we will be later discussing one of the annual accounts, annual reports of government, and in there and in correspondence thereto, it is highlighted, the concerns regarding the overall Social Security funds are highlighted once again. So in the specific case of this requiring an increase, and an increase means money, extra pay. And so I would like to get an overview of the funds, and this one in particular, so the old age fund, with the inclusion of this, of the indexation of the pension. How does it look with that indexation? Mr. Chairman, these are in essence the three questions that I would like the minister to delve into and respond to, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. And I look at the speakers list. I see a request from MP Rolando Bryson. MP Bryson, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, the Secretary General with us, the members of Parliament, and of course our Honorable Minister and his support team and those viewing. Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank the Minister for once again bringing yet another very important piece of legislation. And I like the term that is used. It is a technical term, a repairing ordinance. But even from layman's term, I like the term repairing, because that really shows it is something that we're fixing that has unfortunately existed for quite some time. It is a challenge that I know over the years the government has faced, and there was no workaround. It was as simple as we need to make these adjustments and we need the support of Parliament in order to proceed with the adjustments that we want to make. And again, highlighting, as with previous legislation that the Minister has brought, I think his approach to really staging all of these legislation that are so interconnected, but rather than bundling them into one package, you once again see that we come in certain stages so that we can handle, this is how we're going to deal with the indexation, this is how we're going to deal with the funding, this is how we're going to deal with the SZV limit, and it's much more digestible for the members of Parliament, I think. Personally, for me, I enjoy being able to handle the legislation the way the ministry has been presenting them to Parliament, because we are now able to stick to the crux of this matter. And the crux of this matter is, it is time to allow the government to have a better way to index all of these various funds and minimum wage, etc., and all of what this can affect. Because the sort of domino effect that these legislation has is also what is interesting. I too had one of the question in terms of social aid, the implications of the fact that with the adjustment to the minimum wage, it also kind of increases that threshold. So I also look forward to the answer to that question. But further, if the minister has any plans related to the social aid national decree, where within this decree let's say we're modernizing the aspect in terms of how we will calculate the minimum wage aspect. But I do think that while it's not specifically on this topic, there are changes coming to this LBHAM perhaps. And if that's the case, if the minister is also going to look at other aspects, for example, the ratio by which within Article 2, where you talk about single person 70%, single parent family home 85%, a family not being one parent family 90%, are we going to maybe review some of these instances? Are we going to review what is offered, for example, under Article 8, where the cost for temporary shelter after calamities, 10 guilders per day, that might have been something significant, when this legislation was first drafted 40 or 50 years ago. It's just that, in doing an LBHAM, the minister is probably going to make some changes related to the minimum wage aspect, but if the minister will also at least look into some of these other aspects that maybe too need to be indexed, just like we're going to index the minimum wage and the old age pension. I also would like to know, kind of tied into the question regarding the fund and how these funds will be able to absorb the additional cost. But how much does this tie into the plan to actually legislate the manner in which we manage the fund? So if legislation, the so-called SCHUML funds legislation comes into effect, does that then allow more flexibility to allow the funds to manage these increase in costs, maybe make better investments or whatever? How can that tie into ensuring that yes, we are happy and proud that we're going to be able to have millions of guilders more going from our fund, but we also know that it needs to be managed, and it would be good to hear what the plans are in terms of managing the fund and if there are other legislative changes needed to help with that. Mr. Chairman, I think the legislation is pretty clear. I think it's effective. I think it's going to get the job done, and the minister will then do the rest. So I don't have much questions today other than to congratulate the minister and the ministry for repairing something that has been broken for quite some time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Rolando Bryson. We have another speaker, MP George Pontiflet.
Thank you,
MP
Mr. Chairman.
Pontiflet, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to the Chair, my colleagues in Parliament, of course, Honourable Minister and his support staff, those that are sitting and those that are viewing. Mr. Chairman, indeed, yes, it's good that these changes have been brought to this legislation. I am going to take it from a different angle with respect to the issue of the social aid or social assistance. I believe my colleague, MP Bryson, answered a few questions that I had with regards to how the aid is given, whether it depends on the size of the family, single family, so on, because I know of some persons who are single parent, they would receive 600 guilders or 800 guilders. I thought that it would have been the minimum wage itself, but of course, that's not how it functions. The concern that I have, Mr. Chairman, is the issue of the two things, the time frame it takes to get back to persons who are requesting social assistance. The time frame that it takes. Is it laid down by legislation as to how long, if, for instance, somebody requests social assistance today, how long does it take, or what does the law say is the time frame within which government should get back to the individual? The reason I'm asking this question, Mr. Chairman, because a person have waited 5-6 months without getting an answer. That's why I'm stating this question here now. And also the issue of the request itself. Is there any way we can make it less complicated and asking for so many details that, I mean, some persons that get very discouraged when they see what all they have to present in order to get social aid. Somebody just say, forget about it, which is not what we want to take place. So just the two questions, Mr. Chairman, so far is the amount, I believe, that the individual receives, whether it is dependent upon their household, how many persons there, and the time frame within which it takes for government to get back to those individuals who are requesting social assistance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP George Pontiflet. And with that, we have come to the end of questions and statements by members of Parliament on this draft. And I now look at the minister. Minister, do we need to adjourn? How much time would you need? 20 minutes? You sure 20 minutes? We adjourn until 12:12. That's a nice number. Used to be my number plate. 12:12. Meeting adjourned. Good afternoon and welcome back after that short break. Was to give the minister the opportunity to prepare the answers to the questions and observations brought forward by members of parliament. Minister Otley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to answer the questions. I move directly to the questions of MP Sarah Westcott. Has the minister made the necessary adjustment to the social assistance ordinance tied to the minimum wage? Yes, Minister. Yes, MP, we actually did, and it's starting. The process will now go through its legal trajectory. There were meetings with the staff, calculations has been made, and it will go through now the legal trajectory to see how and if it can be done, and ramifications. Where and what is the difference made possible for the minimum wage to go into effect? I would like to make clear that the minimum wage is based on the national ordinance regulating the minimum wage, and the AOV is done on a different ordinance. The LBHAM of 2022 did a one-time increase based on Article 13, Paragraph 2 of the National Ordinance Regulating Minimum Wage. The minister has the discretion to set the amount to what they want as long as it can be justified. Based on Article 13.1, the minister, after having heard the said, can index the minimum wage, in which the said rendered an advice in 2012 or 13, in which we no longer have to come back to them for ministerial regulation yearly. Based on Yezetin Way's advice from December 3rd, 2019, the minister has the discretion to choose the most available CPI for minimum wage to be indexed. This is done via ministerial regulation and was taken to the COM in the best interest of the public to utilize third quarter CPI. Please provide further elucidation on the retroactive nature on the pension. The wijziging 125 can be found in the regulation of the Prime Minister June 27th, 2023, establishing the direction for regulation on St. Maarten MP. Will the Landsverordening be put into effect as of January 1st, 2023? No, MP, it will go into effect once we have the blessing of Parliament and signing of His Excellency. That will be the date it would go into effect of this legislation, the last of this legislation. Could you please provide a short overview on the financial situation? With your indulgence, I would like to provide this in writing and also notify the MP as well as MP Bryson on your question with the funds that I would like to provide you with the link. That it can be found on www.sfv.sx/info about annual reports. All of the information needed is there. It's there also for the public. So all the financials can be sent there, and I would send you the link if you still need it, MP, in writing. MP Bryson, are you going to review the financial aid legislation? Yes, MP has stated this is currently done. It's now beginning the process to be sent to the said and carry out its legislative trajectory. How much does the SCUMO fund tie into this? At the moment, as I stated, all financial implications can be found on the website provided. I can provide that to you in writing as well, the website, so you can have a perusal, MP. MP Panaflet, how is financial aid given? The amount is based on a calculation that the ministry has. Also the time frame it takes to get back for a request. Financial aid takes 2 months, maximum medical aid 1 month, legal aid 2 weeks, emergency medical defined as clients who is, have life-threatening injuries, illnesses. You have a 72-hour period or less. Those were the questions asked by the members of Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister Otley. Is there any need for Any follow-up? MP Westcott Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good afternoon. Thank you, Minister, for your responses to my questions. Just to understand, because I don't know if my question regarding the going into effect date was understood. Of course, this draft national ordinance would need to be passed in order to become effective, but it states that the implementation date will be done by national decree. That's what this ordinance states. So my question was, will the national ordinance to follow state specifically, the national decree to follow, will it state specifically that a national ordinance as passed by Parliament will go into effect on the 1st of January? So that was my question. I just want to make sure that I understood the part regarding the social assistance and whatever adjustments are being made. So are there two trajectories, is my question with respect to the social assistance? A review of the amounts that are now being paid out, which are based on the current or the previous minimum wage. So is that review of actual payout amounts started to take place? And next to that, there will be a review, or there is a review taking place regarding the regulation that exists for social assistance, because that is something that the minister has announced in the past, that the legislation governing social assistance and all of the way it's calculated, who gets what percentage, that will be reviewed. So do I understand, one, the matter of adjusting the social assistance in connection with the increase of the minimum wage, that's one. And then you have the regulation, which is in place currently regarding the social assistance. Are there those two trajectories? And yes, Mr. Chairman, if I can get those two matters clarified as per the answers of the minister. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. Is there any need for further clarification by any other member? No, I see no need. Minister, can you immediately respond, or you need immediately? Quick draw, McGraw. Minister, you have the floor.
MP, as it pertains to your question with social, Mr. Chair, through you, to the MP, where it relates to your question based on financial aid and the calculation, yes, those two are separate. We are looking into both of those matters. As it pertains to the first questions with the ministerial decree, I would have to consult with the legal of the department to give you a definite answer.
Thank you, Minister. Did he? No, your mic was on, that's why. Oh. Thank you, Minister. Well, if there are no more comments, a report will be sent to the government on this draft national ordinance, and we will await then the further handling. I would like to thank the Minister and his support staff for their presence here today and providing the necessary information. As we have indicated at the start, this was actually agenda point 2, and we will adjourn the meeting so that the minister can and his support staff can leave, and we will adjourn for a few minutes for the arrival of the Minister of Finance so we can handle agenda point 1. We adjourn for 6 minutes until 12:40. Minister, thank you. Meeting adjourned. Good afternoon and welcome back to the continuation of this meeting. We are now back at agenda point 1, which was switched earlier with agenda point 2. For agenda point 1, we have the Minister of Finance and his support staff here present, and we want to welcome the Honorable Minister of Finance, Minister Irion, and his support staff. And we move over to agenda point 1. Agenda point 1, as indicated this morning, is Ontwerplandsverordening tot vaststelling van de jaarrekening van het land Sint Maarten voor het dienstjaar 2021, Landsverordening, vaststelling jaarrekening 2021, ingekomen stuk 750 van het jaar 2022-2023, de dato 8 mei 2023. National Ordinance establishing the annual accounts for Sint Maarten for the fiscal year 2021. National Ordinance establishing accounts 2021 of the parliamentary year 2022-2023, document 167. Yeah. We go over to agenda point 1. On May 8, 2023, Parliament received the draft National Ordinance establishing the annual accounts for St. Maarten for the financial year 2021. This document is registered as incoming document 750 of the parliamentary year 2022-2023, dated May 8, 2023. Parliamentary year 2022-2023, document 167, and can be found on the General Drive of Parliament. At this time, I would like to give the floor to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Artwell Irion, for some opening remarks and his presentation. Minister Irion, you have the floor.
Good afternoon to you, Mr. Chairman, griffier, members of Parliament, to the viewing public. We'll get right into it. Today we present to you the 2021 audited financial statements of Sint Maarten. And I look to the presentation, I don't see it on the screen.
We adjourn for 2 minutes for some technical updates.
I think she said she sent it.
We hereby reopen the meeting. The technical issues have been resolved, and we give the floor to the Minister of Finance. Minister, you have the floor.
Yes, as was mentioned earlier, we are here to present the 2021 audited financial statements of Sint Maarten. I'm happy to be here to present to you the audited financial statements of Sint Maarten for the year 2021. As you know, during my tenure as Minister of Finance, we managed to clean up the backlog on the financial statements of Sint. And as promised, I intend to make sure that I do not create any more backlogs during my capacity. When it comes to the quality of the financial statements, we know, just like the budget, that is still a work in progress. However, we are happy that we can already see major improvements versus the last few years, and we will continue to improve. During this presentation, I'll discuss the following: the income statement and the balance sheet of 2021. I'll also highlight the significant differences in the balance sheet and the income statement compared to 2020. Besides this, I will also highlight the significant differences in the figures in the income statement compared to the approved 2021 budget. After that, I'll briefly give some insight on the audited reports received from the SOAB and the Audit Chamber with regard to the 2021 financials, and we'll close off the presentation with my conclusions. 2021 was an uncertain year, as we had no idea how COVID would have impacted us. Based on this, we requested and received a deviation from the balanced budget requirement based on Article 25. The 2021 budget showed a negative result of 241 million guilders. However, our actuals of 2021 resulted in a negative result of 95 million guilders, which was a lot better than we anticipated. In total, we had a revenue of 429 million guilders and total expenses amounting to 524 million guilders. When assessing the revenue, it's pretty much in line with our budget. When the funds received from the NRPB and the Netherlands of 53 million guilders is excluded, the actual revenue amounts to 376 million guilders compared to a budgeted amount of 372 million guilders. This is very good, as our aim is, of course, to focus on realistic budgets. With regards to the expenses, we can see that these were much lower than budgeted. This mainly was due to the COVID development, which led to less spending. When we look at the balance sheet of the actuals 2021 versus 2020, I'm happy that the cleanup project, which was initiated in 2021, led to a huge improvement in the financial statements and also resulted in better disclosure information. The highlights of the balance sheet. I've highlighted the balance sheet in items with the largest fluctuations in comparison to 2020. In comparison to 2020, the value of the vehicles increased with approximately 8 million guilders, which is mainly due to the transfer of vehicles via the trust fund. This is part of the ERP1 project managed by the NRPB. The long-term receivables increased with 30 million guilders compared to 2020, which is mainly caused by the loan received from the trust fund, which in turn loaned to the PGIA via the government of Sint Maarten. Thus, the increased receivable is the amount to be received in return from PGIA. Improvement disclosure debtors in the financial statement. For the year 2021, the disclosure has been improved. You can now clearly see the main outstanding receivable of government. In 2021, the main outstanding receivables were from the ground lease, 19 million guilders, lottery, 80 million, and casinos, 50 million. This is the main reason why I have focused on the measures to increase collection of these all outstanding balances. The long-term debt increased with 170 million guilders, of which 117 million guilders relates to new COVID loans issued in 2021, and 50 million relates to a reclassification of a loan that had to be repaid but has been included in the refinancing of all COVID loans. As such, in 2021, this amount was reclassified to long-term debt. The creditors decreased by 64 million guilders. This decrease is mainly due to a decrease of 68 million in other creditors, offset by minor increases in other categories. This major decrease is an effect of the cleanup procedures executed in the financial administration, as the balance in previous years were overstated due to items not being matched and booked off after payment. The short-term debt also decreased by 69 million guilders, which is also a result of the cleanup. 20 million relates to a decrease in accrued expenses and 20 million decrease in accrued COVID expenses. Some highlights of the income statement. I have highlighted the major adjustments in the income statement. The increase in revenue is a result of the inclusion of 53 million funds which were received from the NRPB and the Netherlands. With regard to the NRPB, 32 million relates to the loan for the PJA and 7 million relates to the vehicles which we included in our administration. 10 million was received from the Netherlands in relation to the food voucher project, which was executed by SMDF. The decrease of the 63 million guilders in goods and services is a result of 17 million decrease in projects and activities, as we were not able to execute all the budgeted projects. 11 million decrease in COVID-related expenses due to the decline of COVID in 2021. The actual subsidies and transfers is 59 million guilders, lower than budgeted amount, which is due to a decline in spending of 64 million guilders because of the positive COVID and economic developments, which led to the payroll support program ending in September 2021. Lastly, the 18 million guilders impairment expense is mainly due to an impairment of 14 million on the valuation of the Sint Maarten Harbor holding due to a negative result in 2021, which of course was a result of the pandemic. Now look at the audit reports. On the 2021 financial statements, we again received a disclaimer of opinion on the true and fair view and adverse opinion on the compliance from SOAB. The main reason for this disclaimer is due to uncertainties in the audit, which are mainly caused by deficiencies in the internal control processes, which we intend to address during the adoption of the new financial system and updated processes. The audit chamber executed their audit as well as they commented on the fact that when offsetting the underspending and overspending, there's an underspending of the budget of 146 million guilders. However, they emphasize adjustment through budget amendments to prevent overspending on certain line items. Unfortunately, the current process of budget amendments is very long. This process is also being reviewed to be shortened. We will then be able to have more budget amendments during the year. Both SOAB and the audit chamber stated that there is improvement in the audit information provided and in the quality of the financial statements, and our aim is to continue improving. I would like to close the mission of the Ministry of Finance. Our mission is to efficiently oversee the country's finances by adopting new methods and technology to improve, standardize, streamline, and automate the processes. In addition to provide accountable advice to the government in its policy areas and execute it by providing the public with accurate, relevant information and exceptional service. As stated above, the quality of the financial statement is not where we want it to be as yet. However, we are happy with the continued improvements, the more detailed disclosures, and the cleanup of which led to a more accurate presentation of the amount of the financial statement line items. We know that the implementation of the new financial processes and the new financial system will lead to a more standardized way of working and automated processes, which will also help to further improve the quality of the financial information and the financial statement of the country. Lastly, I would like to thank the staff of the Ministry of Finance and all the other ministries as well, because in order to make a financial statement for Sint Maarten, we are dependent on information from all the different ministries. It is really a team effort, and I thank everyone that provided and compiled information. I thank you for your attention and look forward to the questions from the members of the Parliament.
Thank you, Minister Arion. I immediately open the floor to members of Parliament, and I see our first speaker is MP Sarah Westcott Williams. MP Ms. Scott-Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good afternoon to you now. A good afternoon to my colleagues and all tuned into this meeting. A good afternoon to the Minister of Finance and his support staff here present. Mr. Chairman, let me firstly put forward that I have a few questions regarding this annual account of government, the 2021 annual account, but I have no issue if the answers are provided ahead of having the public meeting, which is a necessary part of this process. I also want to premise my questions on the following statement attributed to the General Audit Chamber in one of its previous commentaries on the annual report/accounts of government, and that the statement is the following: financial statements should facilitate Parliament in its consideration of the budget. And I say this to dispel the notion, if it exists, that when annual accounts come to government, because these have been looked at by Council of Advice, by the SOAB, by the General Audit Chamber, that it is a so-called hammer piece, a hammer stick for the Parliament. To the contrary, these reports and the advices on the reports, the opinions on the reports, are to assist Parliament to do its job. So I just wanted to put that forward. Thanking the Minister for his introduction. I suspect, like has been customary, that we will receive the information, that we will receive the presentation by the Minister. Minister, based on the draft annual account of government for 2021, returning again in this report is the statement that the way the annual reports are done currently makes comparison with the budget difficult. And a similar statement has been made with respect to the so-called uitvoeringsrapportages. So I would like to know whether this matter of having these instruments more in line to make comparisons more easily, if that is a conscious part of the improvement to the financial systems and methods. The annual reports of government should especially provide to Parliament, in this case, who is charged with eventually passing or not of the annual reports. An important part of that is the evaluation of the different ministries. And speaking for myself, the evaluation of the ministries as presented in this annual report are difficult to evaluate. I've noted that some of the parts are actually copy-paste from years gone by. And I see reference to it as if this is the 2019 annual report, 2018 annual report. But looking at the items themselves under the so-called evaluation of the ministries, again, difficult to judge, because what we see is the items, and then most of them are current, lopent. How? Meaning what? How far are these items? How far are these items so that it can be evaluated compared to the budget that was approved by Parliament for government to manage the country. So so that is with respect to the evaluation as put forward in this report. Then I want to go over to the issue of the budget 2023. The letter by the CFT on the budget 2023 as far as it relates to the capital expenditures. One of the reasons that the CFT in its letter, quoting from its letter, granted a go-ahead or a green light to the budget adopted by Parliament was because the government of St. Martin promised a budget amendment. I heard the minister refer to the fact that it is taking long to have budget amendments made. So I would want to ask on this topic, where is, if anywhere at all, the amended budget 2023? That was the premise for the CFT to grant its go-ahead with especially the issue of the capital expenditures and the capital loans for capital expenditures that the budget 2023 contains. So where is this budget amendment that we were supposed to receive? If one goes by the letter of the CFT, we would have expected this months ago, if not weeks ago, if not months ago. So where is that? Coincidentally, I took note of the fact that the Dutch government has been advised positively to grant loans of approximately 60 million guilders as capital loans to execute capital projects on St. Martin. And thus my question is, given what I just stated about CFT, its budget and our budget and our budget amendment, for which projects specifically has the Dutch government decided to write in and finance? So which projects specifically fall under the 60 million guilders as approved, or yes, as approved by the Dutch government? We are now nearly close to the end of June. That would make us nearly close to the end of the second quarter. And in the CFT's reaction to the implementation report, the uitvoeringsrapportage first quarter of this year, there are many things that in their letter are asked to be applied and complied with in the second quarter, the uitvoeringsrapportage of the second quarter. Can the minister give an update with respect to these items and how they are looking in the second quarter? So the correction, the right application, etc. Can we receive? Have any of the suggested improvements to the first quarter uitvoeringsrapportage been achieved / taken along in the second one? I know we have about a week more or less to go for the second quarter, but if these measures are being taken, they should be evident by now. Can the minister provide further insight per line item, so to speak, with respect to the recommendations from the advisory bodies on the annual report of 2020 compared to 2021? So which of these recommendations from the annual report 2020 have now been applied in the annual report before us, which is 2021? The constantly returning issue of the regulations for the tendering of projects by the government of St. Martin in accordance with the National Accountability Ordinance. Where are we today with that, if anywhere? Talking about lotteries and casinos, also much debated issue, they have been, according to the Council of Advice, to draft national ordinance containing general decrees with respect to the lottery ordinance. What do these general decrees, so these national decrees with general measures pertaining to the lottery ordinance, what do they contain? What's the purpose, the premise of these draft national decrees, this LBHUMs, based on the lottery ordinance? What is the status, another question, Mr. Chairman, what is the status of the receipt of reports by the government entities? So what's the update there, and what is government's trajectory with respect to these annual reports? So what are the steps that government undertakes every time such a report is submitted? I think it's in the SOAB reaction to this account, to this report, that the word remarkable, opvallend, is used with respect to the amount of, or the personnel cost as compared to, for example, the year 2016. There, I guess they're using the year before the hurricane. Can the minister provide some insight into why this is so, how this could be so? What I saw several references to overbookings and moving from one post to the other, but generally speaking, can the minister provide some insights into that matter? Of course, notwithstanding the critical comments by the advisory bodies, it is advised that the Parliament of St. Maarten approves this account. Approving it, taking into account the many recommendations that have been made, and for Parliament to follow up on these recommendations and ensure and call the government to give account of the execution of these recommendations. So, Mr. Chairman, as I started out saying, as far as I'm concerned, for me at least, the answers could be provided leading up to the handling of this draft annual report in a public meeting. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Sarah Westcott Williams. And the next speaker is MP Rolando Bryson.
Good afternoon once again, Mr. Chairman, my colleague members of Parliament, the Secretary General, the Honorable Minister, and his support team, as well as those viewing. Mr. Chairman, it's a repeated congratulations that I have to give to the Minister. Some people say, oh, you don't congratulate ministers for doing their job, but if the converse is true, the fact that within this term, we have had to deal with the long backlog of so many financial statements and Parliament not having the opportunity to do exactly what we're doing now, question the minister on why this was spent, why is this owed, why is this not owed. That opportunity has been robbed of the Parliament for many years, and that opportunity is now being given by first addressing the backlog and now maybe coming to a system where you get your financial statements as per the Constitution, and then you go into your budget cycle, and then financial statements, budget cycle, etc. So I think it's very good to have gotten these statements, albeit whatever flaws they may have, which are recognized within the report, the statements of the minister, and so on. But I believe that at least having them here with us gives us some significant insight into the finances of government. So I do appreciate the opportunity to be able to see and have a bit of a picture of not just the budget, what we plan to spend, but how we've actually spent it. Mr. Chairman, my questions more are concerned in terms of what the government is owed, in terms of the liability, the assets that the government have in the forms of debt to it. You know, the minister did mention some of them. But I also look at the section regarding the current assets. So what, as at least is listed within the financial statements as current assets, and there's a few of them that jump out to me and make me have some more questions. In particular, Mr. Chairman, I look to 6.4 of the financial statement, C6.4, where it has a breakdown of the different collectibles by 2021, the receivables in 2021, totaling 28.6 million. In this, we see nog te ontvangen overschotten BTP of 12 million. And this is a discussion we have had with the Minister of TIAT in terms of, you know, what are we going to do in terms of collecting from the BTP, what agreements need to be made, and etc. But from the perspective of the Ministry of Finance, can he give some insight into the manner in which the government should be financially responsible over the debt that BTP has to it? And have there been any agreements since these financial statements where we see, according to the statements, it was 14 million in 2020, and then we closed with a total of 12 million in 2021. So there seems to be some sort of payment that was made. What is the plan going forward? Also, I see here, which is the one here I was looking at. Yeah. Okay, I'll come back to that question later. There was one other area within our current receivables. My second question, Mr. Chairman, I would actually appreciate the minister sending this in writing, because I think this is something the ministry should look into and find out what exactly is happening within our tax department, and that has to do with the opportunity that citizens should have by law to be able to make payment arrangements for arrears and taxes. What I'm referring to is there's the national ordinance in Vordering, the national ordinance on the collection of taxes. And in Article 8 of this law, it states that the collector is authorized to grant taxable persons at their request either a postponement of payment or easier payment condition if it appears beyond any doubt that due to special circumstances beyond their control, they are unable to comply with the prescribed payment rules. A lot of this is very much subject to interpretation. If you look at, let's say, the Invorderingswet of the Netherlands, they are much more detailed into what special circumstances can be. So, for example, a hurricane would be one, or natural disasters. It can also be financial difficulty of the business, economic reasons. I think they list here in Article 25A of the Invorderingswet 12 different instances where it can kind of be classified as a special circumstance. And I think right now in our country, and certainly in 2021, there were many business people in our country that were dealing with a very special circumstance of trying to come out of COVID-19, but still have taxes due. To this date, those assessments are going out. And I know for a fact many of them are being told, you have to pay all one time, or we need to get 80%, liens are being placed. It is almost as if there is no kind of acknowledgement of the opportunity that, yes, if there are some people in our country that are not tax compliant, we can recognize that. But there are some that have just simply gone through a very difficult economic time and are simply asking of the tax department an opportunity to have a payment plan. And it seems that this is really done kind of like, if they feel like, how you talk to them, you know, it's extremely subjective what businesses are experiencing when trying to go, again, based on their right to have that opportunity. Again, Article 8 states it. There is that possibility. Is there any policy within the tax department in terms of what are the set criteria for people to be able to have the opportunity coming out of difficult economic times to be able to get the opportunity to get a tax collection agreement? I know that the SZV does it. I know it's SZV is known to say, listen, we're not here to close you down. We will make an arrangement with you as long as you stick to it, as long as you don't deviate, even if you have to put some guarantees. The SZV seems to work with the business community when it comes to debt. But what I'm getting from the tax department and many local business people is the complete opposite. It's as if they want you to close down, put liens so that now your mortgage and your loan flexibility is in trouble, as if that's going to make it easier for you to pay your taxes. So I really would like the minister to look into this. How often can the minister indicate especially coming out of 2021, a lot of those taxes, from an income tax perspective, might be due now. I don't know if assessments are going out for that already or not. Probably, definitely, I would think for 2020 by now. But is consideration being given, serious consideration, to give the many people in Sint Maarten that have had such a hard time to do this? And if not, should the minister consider, being that it is a national ordinance that allows certain ministerial decrees to be drafted or national decrees, would the minister then consider that we should create a very clear policy that is published, that everyone understands? These are the circumstances by which you are given this so-called Article 8 privilege of being able to deal with outstanding situations in difficult economic times, especially when they have been caused by natural disasters or unexpected events like COVID-19. Mr. Chairman, also, in terms of the collection of concessions in 2021, we can imagine that that has been a difficult time for government-owned companies, now kind of getting into the stage of recovery. Much of 2021, we were still officially in a pandemic. We still had business closures, so government-owned companies were affected. When you look at the financial statements for 2021, you see those reductions reflected. But when those reductions were allowed or sort of waivers or whatever we call it, dispensations when it comes to dividends or concession fees were done in 2021, can the minister maybe indicate, and this can also be sent in writing, maybe give us a list of where we are since 2021, as based on the fact that, let's say, I think there was an example where GEBE was one of the companies that was given such a dispensation, but what was the agreement at the time to say, okay, well, it would not be that it's just completely written off? Was it deferred? And maybe we can get a list of some of those government-owned entities where in 2021 they may have been deferred, but maybe in 2023 or even 2024, we're starting to see that income come back to the government. There's also an interesting part of the in 2021 is this sort of ongedekte checks. And this comes up to 1.7 million guilders as a receivable at that time. I know that since then, I believe it was after 2021 when the government had changed its policy in terms of the acceptance of checks. Can the minister maybe comment on perhaps this being one of the reasons, and what is the situation today in terms of the collectability of these ongedekte checks that the government has on its budget? So, Mr. Chairman, again reiterating the balancing the need for the government to go and collect our taxes, I really implore the minister to take some time, look into this, get us some answers, and give us an in-depth answer as to what the situation is with allowing people to have some breathing room so that our economy can recover. And I look forward to getting that answer in writing from the minister before the public handling of these financial statements. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. MP Rolando Bryson. The next MP to take the floor is MP George Pantoflet. MP Pantoflet, you have the floor.
I am not allowed to speak until I'm allowed to speak. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the chair. Again, my colleagues, Parliament, our Honourable Minister of Finance and the support staff. Chairman, I missed part of it, but I know what the agenda points are. So I'll just state this. What the minister and the staff has done in the short period of time, I'm sure it was mentioned before I came, but I didn't have time to follow it. I was on another program, is that things are being done, and soon it'll be up to date as to our financial accounts. As I have said more than once on this floor, that even as a member of the Netherlands Antilles Parliament, they were, I'm going to use this term, decades behind, to the point where it was not possible anymore to go through them, so they were, I think, just approved. Well, Mr. Chairman, my issue is Government needs finances in order to execute responsibilities. The issue of taxes has always been and will be for a while a very difficult discussion. Compliance is a challenge because of the fact that there are those who unfortunately are not paying their fair share of taxes, which makes it difficult for government. And of course, you find the tax office vehemently pursuing the low-hanging fruits in order to ensure that monies come into the coffers. I want to say this to us as a people, that you know, when it comes to our duties where taxes are concerned, we should definitely do our utmost to ensure that we pay our taxes, which would free up funds for government to really put the money into social responsibilities, health responsibilities, education, and law enforcement. I wrote an article some time ago, Mr. Chairman, and I said tax compliance can lead to tax write-offs. In other words, the more money you collect, you can look at, see exactly as to, you know, how can I ease the pressure on institutions, on individuals, and especially in these cases, we know the complaints from our senior citizens. But I want to say this publicly, and I will continue to do so, that it lies within the hand of persons who are not paying their taxes for whatever reasons, to understand that they are also contributing to the difficulties when it comes to revenues for government. Some that I believe many of us, I dare say, do not do, is when we have persons come and do what we'll call odd jobs at our homes, and maybe they charge $150, $200, whatever, and we just give them the cash, sometimes not even a receipt, and that's it. But I can remember years ago that there would be a white sheet of paper, I think, with name, address, and so on, where we were asked to, as individuals, so once we give money or pay someone for an odd job, what we consider odd job at our home or whatever, that we should put the individual's name, address, information, and submit it along when we are filing our income tax return form. That was something that used to happen in the past, or should have happened in the past. Because what we find today, and it might seem like it's not much, if you add up $150 a day in 30 days, or let's say even 20, 15 days, you're looking at $4,000 a month. Revenue for which the government is not collecting any taxes. It might seem small, Mr. Chairman, but I can tell you that's where we are losing, I would say, millions of dollars in revenues. Again, I want to congratulate the minister and his staff. There's a lot of work still to be done, but I believe that as we continue on and we really live up to our civil responsibilities, and ensuring that we pay our fair share of taxes, in order for those who might be struggling to do so, to come to some kind of agreement to either minimize the payments or cancel those payments completely, especially those that are 5 years and prior. And yes, I can hear the argument, yes, but I paid my taxes, I paid mine also. But I'm looking at going forward. Because it also takes time to go back 10, 15 years and so on, which unfortunately sometimes the person getting assessment for 2008, 2011, 2012, and in 2023. So again, congratulations to the minister and his staff, and I look forward to any other changes or any other things that relate to the issue of finances, and to see that soon our financial accounts will be up to date. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP George Pantuflet. I look at the speakers list. There are no requests. So we have come to the end of the questions and queries by members of Parliament. And we now look at the minister. Minister, can you immediately go into it, or you want to make some remarks? The minister has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, in regards to MP Bescott, I believe also MP Bryson mentioned that getting the answers right in before the public meeting. Mr. MP Panfield wasn't here, so I would like to know if he also wouldn't mind that, so then we then close and send them answers in writing before the public meeting. No objections, okay. Then that's what we're going to do.
Is there any further need for deliberations by members? No. Then, thank you, Minister. A report will be sent on this draft national ordinance. And we have now come to the end of the deliberations. And I thank you, Minister, for your presence here this afternoon. I thank you. I thank your staff. I thank you, members of Parliament, for your participation in the meeting thus far. And I hereby close this meeting. Meeting closed.